So if you're building a championship team, right?
Yeah.
Is it better to draft players that are polished coming out of college or players that have a lot of potential but aren't quite there yet?
Ooh, I have a good answer. I'll let you take this first.
That is a general manager decision.
Okay.
That is what they feel is in their best interest.
So let's say you're the GM of a team. What would you do?
You got to give me an example of like players.
Just pick.
So
would you do?
here, I can give you an example. Someone already polished. It's really hard because there really haven't been many number one picks that go. I'll give you some role player examples. Someone like Cam Johnson was already a polished 5-year college player. He was an old rookie.
Right.
Compared to someone like Noah Clowney, who's really raw. He needs time to develop. We did the same thing with Nick Claxton. So something like that. Would you rather a star be polished like that? I think is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
If I am a GM with a late pick, I will take the high flyer. But if I'm taking a high pick, I'm taking the polished guy that has put up good college numbers and I know can make an immediate impact right now rather than the upside player.
Right.
That's what I would decide. But I'm not saying I wouldn't flip-flop and do it another year differently.
What's your reasoning, though, behind it?
I think college experience, is something that players need, I feel like, unless you're international.
Right.
Of course, the G League has been kind of just like, who knows what's happening with it now.
They can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
G League and I folded.
Yeah, so, they're all going to be going through college or through international. I think, not to say that Europe is a big stage, which it is compared to college basketball, it's just another big stage, but all the guys that we've seen that are not international guys have came through college. The other guys we've seen come out of Europe have been generational. Luka, Wemby, Jokic, Giannis. College guys we've seen that came through the ranks that are great. AD, LeBron's high school, he doesn't count. KD, Texas, Trae Young, Oklahoma.
Right.
All these guys were great in college, and those coaches in the college or somewhat have NBA experience or somewhat can be NBA coaches, and it's the step before NBA, which Bronny played at USC for a year. He didn't. That's another example. He got college experience, but he had some health issues along the way. Now he's coming into the league now.
Right.
But I think the polished player takes the cake for me. I think because experience that I guess as a GM would see close to NBA related play style in college basketball compared to international. We don't really know how much they do differently. I'm sure they watch film.
Debatable.
Well,
I'm sure they watch film on.
As far as college versus Europe,
Yeah.
I mean, Europe, they're playing professionally against 20 and 30-year-olds.
Exactly.
Like, it's big. Like, college, you're playing against, like, if you look at Duke, they're playing a D2 school opening night, and then they're playing against, like, a mid-major that's got players that aren't NBA, they're not even close to NBA caliber.
Yeah, they're only getting, like, good games against their conference opponents.
Right, and even still, like, these players go to these academies like IMG, and they're going 50-0 in high school. They don't have to do it when they're losing.
True. It's very true.
It's an interesting decision. I think it can go either way for me if I was a GM. I think it depends which player I like and which player I don't like.
That's
in
fair.
a certain draft.
So it's case by case, sort of.
Yeah, I think you have to evaluate on how you feel it fits on your team. But I'm not saying I wouldn't take the high flyer over the college guy.
Right.
That's
I
fair.
would, if need be, if I feel it in my gut as a GM, because GM decisions are made on their gut.
True.
Right.
And what they feel is best for the team. Sometimes they get fired for it because they failed. It's part of the job.
Right.
Sometimes they succeed. But if your guy is your guy, whether it's the college guy or the high upside guy, just take your guy. You have your coaches. You trust them. Let them build them up.
Right.
And you go from there.
The flyer guy could also be a college guy. Could
Yeah,
get
of
one
course.
Done.
Yeah.
So,
I want to hear this.
yeah.
ahead.
So
What do you
he's
think?
right. It's very, very GM owner dependent, stuff like that. There's a caveat to me when it comes to this, right? Because I want someone that can develop, because if they're already polished and there's not much to improve on, you need someone that's going to build up in their first 4 or 5 years in the league before they reach their prime. My thing is, outside of the Europeans, because the Europeans are, they're rare when you see one like that, right? Whether it's a Jokic or a Giannis or a Wemby. Look back at the American first options that have won a championship with their team. I think it's been a very long time since we've seen that where they went to a major school. A lot of them went to mid-majors, right? Yeah. You saw it. Obviously, Jokic is European. Steph went to Davidson. Kawhi went to San Diego State. It was all just Steph. LeBron doesn't count because LeBron's an outlier.
Yeah.
He was so good, it was ridiculous. It's either Europe or mid-major schools, and that's what typically makes you great. You watch the NFL a lot. Notice how a lot of the group of 5 schools, their quarterbacks are more NFL ready because you're dealing with the adversity in college from not playing for a highly dominant team. Because if you play for like an Alabama or an LSU, you're going to go to a shit team and you're going to wind up, instead of going from the best O-line and the best wide receivers in the nation, you're now going to the worst ones in that league, in the NFL. So I think having those guys, whether it's a guy from Europe or a guy from, a mid-major school, obviously not one of the smaller ones, but one where they're competitive and you really bring out all facets of your game, I think it's important. And I think getting a guy that will develop someone that's coachable is obviously very helpful, but someone that's going to help you develop up into the ranks and become good. That's what made Steph Curry so good with the Warriors. They took their time with him. Denver took their time with both Jokic and Murray. They came off the bench together, and now they're the best duo in the NBA. So that's what's, I think, most important with that. You look at Wemby, even though Wemby's got a lot to learn, right? He had one of the best rookie seasons, if not the best rookie season ever. And there were still a lot of flaws that he had, mainly conditioning. That's also very important. But you can see someone that's got time to develop, but someone that's not fully polished, because you don't want to enter the league without room to improve, because that's a problem. You can't have that. So I'm looking, if I have a championship team, I'm looking for a polished guy, because you need someone ready right from the go.
Yeah.
So that's where it's important. But as far as like someone like Derek Lively is kind of a mixture of both, because he's got a lot to learn, but he's already making an impact, versus someone like Christian Brown who made an impact immediately.
Right.
So it's tough.
Good. By the way, I think you should be a general manager.
Oh God, I'd want to cry, bro.
No, because this answer is absolutely spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for real. Keep going though.
Yeah, I'll see what more I have.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because right now, obviously, G League Ignite's done. So your only routes for the pros are college, overtime elite, or any professional circuit overseas, whether that's in Europe, Australia. I know it's a very popular option. But I think right now I've always been saying it's a Europeans league. A European is the way to go, right? I think you're seeing that. Obviously, you have the main guys, but you got some up and comings, like Şengün is one, for example, that's kind of working his way up. Obviously, Wemby is Wemby. But for me, you need someone to develop, especially because most teams that pick outside of the 2020 Warriors have blown it up. They're rebuilding. Why not start with someone raw, someone that you need time to develop with, and someone that's you develop chemistry with not only your teammates but your coach. That's why I think teams have been so impatient with coaches, because coaching's important for a guy too.
Yeah. Fair.
So it's kind of a mix between all of it. Obviously, you want some polished skills and attributes from them to begin with, but that's obviously what puts them into that position in the first place. So at the end of the day, for me, that's probably what I would do. And I think 9 times out of 10, it would work out. And that always doesn't amount. Working out doesn't always mean winning a championship, because winning a championship is very hard. So as long as you are successful, player turns into a star.
Right.
That's all you can really ask for at that point.
Both cases, they can turn out to be super successful.
Right.
Right. For example, Giannis, super raw.
Yeah.
Coming out of wherever he came from. And then he turned into a beast. Now, Jason Tatum, he was super polished coming out of college, but he had more potential to reach. So those are like two sides of the spectrum, but they're both superstars.
And I think, too, there's just a whole different perception on these teams now. I think back when we were growing up, I mean, after the mid to late 2000s, the Bucks were irrelevant. The Nuggets were irrelevant. The Mavs had won a championship and then became irrelevant for years. So you're getting good perceptions from these teams. The Warriors were nothing until Steph Curry came around, and then that whole dynasty formed. And then obviously the Raptors were always just there, but then that 1 year of Kawhi, it just changes you. But that's obviously different because Kawhi got traded there. But I think the draft has become super important. Most championship teams are homegrown. And it's very rare you see your first option get traded to a team and you win a championship. So no matter who wins the championship this year outside of Indiana, it's all homegrown talent. Tatum and Brown with Boston, Cat and Edwards with Minnesota, and blanking on Luka with the Mavs.
This is a good point. Yeah, that's interesting.
So every championship team except Kawhi over the past decade have been homegrown talent.
Didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's a discussion we've had a lot in net spaces because, twice now in the past 15 years we've given up the kitchen sink for stars and it's ended horribly, and the Suns are experiencing it right now where you're going to have no picks that you can control. So
yeah,
it's tough.
Well, great answer, both of you guys. Great answers. Yeah, because honestly, I thought I underperformed with the question, but you guys carried.
I think it was good.
No.
Good job, guys.
What do you think?
With which one?
Both. Just kind of give us a brief.
I mean, I think I gave my answer. I think in terms of the first question, I think. What was the question? Let me see.
There's no way.
Okay,
there is no
draft
way.
Underwhelming because the NBA has gotten so good.
That is blasphemous.
I do think the draft has become very underwhelming because of, like I said before, the free agency and trades and all these things. But to your point, the NBA is sort of coming out of that because they're realizing that championships are made with when you draft a player and they're homegrown, like you said.
Right.
So I think the NBA is coming out of that, but maybe we'll see in the future drafts having more emphasis and more excitement with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my answer to that. And for the second one, I think it's definitely better if I had to pick, because obviously it's case by case. You got to know the player. You have to, even the player's personality comes into play and all that.
There's so many combinations of what you need, whether it's player, coach, city, franchise, owner.
Right, all those things come into play.
Conference, like the way the conference is stacked. There's a lot that goes into it.
Oh yeah, so it's like, if I had to pick, I would say I would take the more raw. I would take a risk. I'm a risk taker, but I'm going to take the more raw player that has a higher upside than the player that's polished and maybe doesn't have as much of an upside as the other player. So I'll take the risk.